Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Lang, and welcome to the fourth webinar in our series on small business survival. First of all, on behalf of Small Business Australia, thank you for taking the time to come along today, as well as if you've already joined Small Business Australia, for joining up. By way of background, over the last 6 weeks, we've been talking with more than 700 small businesses across the country to understand what their key issues are with respect to the impact of the virus and the impact that's been having on their business, and asking them specifically for the type of assistance they're looking for from the 3 different levels of government, as well as other areas where they feel they're having problems and they need some guidance, some sounding boards, and some support, particularly emotional support, to get through this very difficult period that we're all facing. If you haven't already downloaded a copy, we have this very small guide called the 5-Step Survival Guide, and it's available at smallbusinessaustralia.org. You'll find in this small guide the key questions and effectively checklists around the sorts of things to be thinking about as you develop and then implement your small business survival plan. What I'm going to do now in terms of format is share with you several PowerPoint slides. I'll take you through the way things will run over the next 30 or 40 minutes. We will be recording this presentation and then making it available to others who haven't had the opportunity to join us. And from time to time, I may go quiet because I'll be letting more people actually into the webinar. There's 3 or 4 people waiting there at the moment for me to let them in. So again, welcome. We'll have this wrapped up in the next 50 minutes or so. And now let me share my screen with you. And, or should I say, stop sharing the screen first of all. Welcome to everyone, especially the 3 new people that have joined us. Let me now share the screen and take you through how the next 40 to 45 minutes is going to work. Okay. It's good to see that some people who have attended the other webinars have been able to join us again this afternoon. So welcome back to you guys. And there's also some people that are attending that helped us develop the survival guide. And thank you very much for your input in terms of making the 5-step plan much more tangible. As I was just saying earlier, the process and approach today is I will talk for 30 to 40 minutes. If you've been able to print out the overview slides that we sent through, they're reasonably sparse. You can use those, otherwise a couple of sheets of A4 paper, and I encourage you to write down specifically the things that resonate with you, that you need, that you want to act upon. We'll also be providing you with some other web links to additional free resources that are available to help you implement your 5-step plan. You'll find on Zoom, if you haven't used Zoom before, at the bottom of the screen, you'll have possibly a button that says More or a button that says Chat. If you click on More, you'll then see a menu that has something called Chat there. If you can see Chat, if you click on it, Chat will come up. Chat's the area where I encourage you to ask questions as they occur to you as we go through the webinar. So jot them down there. When I'm finished presenting, I will have a quick look at those and ensure that I cover those questions in terms of the question and answer area. So the last 10 or 15 minutes of the session will be questions and answers. What we've done in the other webinars then is I unmute you. So I turn your microphones on or ask you to turn them on if you've got a question, and then we get you to ask the question and we give you an answer. Now, one thing I want to say about small business and small business in Australia is that at Christmas time, there were 2 million individual small businesses in the country. And the small business sector provided financial security and livelihoods to 5 million Australians. So while most of these businesses are very small, like all of our businesses, we actually contribute to 5 million people having jobs and earning an income. Some of the analysis and research that we've conducted in the last couple of months indicates that we could have already lost 100 to 150,000 of those businesses where the business owners have decided they can't keep going. Depending on how long the restrictions stay in place, how quickly people resume some confidence and start to spend money again, we might find that there could be up to another 350. We could lose 500,000 small businesses over the next 6 months. And while people will say we're the engine room of the economy and all the innovation happens in small business, absolutely true. What's more important and more critical from our point of view at Small Business Australia is we will potentially be losing 500,000 hearts and souls of local communities, because after all, it's people like you that provide work experience for the high school kids. give the kids part-time jobs, sponsor the local footy club, the local dance studio. So it's absolutely critical that we do everything we can to get through this period and out onto the other side. Our philosophy and belief is that we will continue to lobby the government, ask them to improve what they're making available and the basis on which it's made available. But at the end of the day, as small business owners, one of the reasons we got into small business was for the independence that we wanted, the ability to be able to make our own decisions, to get involved in things that we want to get involved in. And so now is the time to reconnect in with that initial motivation that got you into small business in the first place, and to find the wherewithal, the focus, and to bring the energy to get our ways through this onto the other side. And in many cases, we may find we have better businesses than what we had 12 months ago. So that's the overview as to how things are going to work. Now, I will start working my way through these slides. Some of you have had the benefit of attending the earlier webinars. I'll be doing a little bit of a refresher on a couple of elements of those, but then we'll be digging very specifically into step 3 of the 5 steps. And step 3, of course, is the reinvention process. So what are the 5 steps? So I think about them as the 5 R's. The first is around realization. The second, then reorganizing. The third, reinvention, that we're going to be talking about today. 4th, then, is reskilling of yourself and your key employees. And then 5 is restarting, being ready and out of the blocks to implement the plan as soon as restrictions start to be lifted and things start to move back to a more freer set of consumers, being able to get out and about and resume elements of their former lifestyles. Now, number 1, realization. When we created this framework a few weeks ago, just before Easter, in fact, there were a lot of business owners that were still absolutely in shock. I couldn't believe what had happened. In their mind was, I'll just get through Easter, then I'll get out of Easter, then start getting my head around what I'm going to do. A couple of the key things about realization, and when you read it in the 5-step plan, is to realize that things are not going to go back to the way they were at Christmas time or early January. Now, remember, we had the major crises in part of Australia with the bushfires, and a number of businesses and communities wiped out as a result of that. But if you weren't impacted by the bushfires, effectively you had a business that was motoring along. It may or may not have been delivering you what you really wanted from it. There are many business owners that feel they're a slave to their business, but nevertheless you had a business. And the way it operated back then is not going to be the way it will need to operate going forward in terms of surviving and thriving. So there's a realization around things are not going to go back to the way they were. The second thing to realize is one of the most important things as owners we all need to be aware of is how we maintain our own personal health, physical health, emotional health, mental health. And now look, there's lots of information out there on the internet, like there's a tsunami of stuff. A lot of it looks good, but has no scientific rigor behind it. Health is one of those classic areas. There's no shortage of influencers on Instagram wearing their Lululemon, or on Facebook, that have great little videos and show you X, Y, and Z. I recommend you go to credible sources of information like Harvard University's medical school and do a search, and you'll find the link in our guide of how to boost your immune system, what actually works. And it doesn't involve fancy supplements and all the rest of it. But have a look at those key steps and keep those in mind. We have to keep each other very, very healthy if we're going to develop these strategies and to have our businesses survive and thrive. So that's the first real thing about realizing that things will not go back, realizing how important your health is, and that we really can't have these businesses hibernate. As business owners, most of us are thinking about our businesses most hours of the day. We can't be falling asleep and hibernating at this first era. We have to be active. We have to be getting things organized. So the second part of the 5-step plan is reorganization, and reorganization to get to cash flow neutral or cash flow positive as soon as possible. Now, in many respects, cash flow is like the blood pumping through the body of the business. Without cash flow, the body can't function. The business can't function. And then customers are the oxygen of a business. And we know in many industries, effectively the governments have closed them down, that there are no customers available to come along through this period in terms of dealing with the virus and COVID-19. So reorganization, and we ran a webinar on reorganization yesterday, is specifically about working through 4 areas to get yourself cash flow positive, or at least cash flow neutral, so that you can last as long as possible with respect to your financial resources. Number 3, we're going to be talking about today, so that's around reinvention. Number 4 is reskilling. And what reskilling is about is based on how you're going to reinvent the business, what are the skills that you as the owner and that your key employees need to get better at? And what are the skills you can be pointing out to your past employees or past contractors that you believe will be important in the future, that while you may not be able to provide them with an employment opportunity in the short to medium term, if they build up skills in these areas, they could well be highly attractive to you again. It's not your fault they've lost their jobs. It's not their fault they've lost their jobs. But having the business survive is the thing that has to be put first to enable any of those jobs to potentially reoccur. And then fifth is restarting. So then we're off and going again. And we've gone through the process of reorganizing. We've worked out exactly how we're going to reinvent. We've worked on the reskilling, and we'll probably have to continue to work on it. Now we put the metal to the floor, put our foot on the accelerator, and get out as quickly as possible to get the business cash flow positive again. So today, I'm going to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes talking more specifically about this whole process of reinvention. And in talking about it, I'm just going to start with sharing with you a couple of the images that we show in the webinar related to number 5 on restarting. And these are pretty important. The very first one that you see there is based on pictures that we've all seen now on the mainstream television or on the internet of mass graves. In this case, this mass grave site is in New York City. Now, there's a saying in the television news business that goes as follows. It says that if it bleeds, it leads. Now, what does that mean? It basically means they want to put stories out all of the time at the front of their bulletins that can get the attention of people. And these sorts of crises, tragedies, capture the brain's imagination very quickly and get you paying attention. However, the challenge for us as business owners who need to turn our businesses around and have them survive is we really can't afford to be taking in more bad news, to be getting more concerned about how bad things are in Italy or how bad things are in New York. Fortunately, it would appear we're not going to have anything near these types of sites in Australia, but nevertheless, this is what's leading on the news. And the more you're exposed to it, the more energy, the more enthusiasm is going to get sucked out of the marrow of your bones in terms of focusing on what you've got to do to have the business survive. So one of the keys is to be focusing on things that you can control. And I highly recommend minimizing, to the extent that you can, your exposure to very bad news. It will not serve you and it will not serve your business. The second picture there is a lemonade stand. And some of you may be thinking, oh, that's right, if the world gives you lemons, make lemonade. And I'll talk a little bit later on about people that have quickly got into the hand sanitizer business. But that's actually not the message that I'm looking to communicate here. What I'm looking to communicate here is I'm going to ask you to tap back into what it felt like, what you were thinking about when you first decided to get into small business. And people get into it in a number of ways. Some people get into it because, they lose their jobs and they decide they're going to start something. Or they get into it because they've been able to save some money up and they buy an existing business and they have a dream to do things with that business. Or thirdly, maybe they've worked in a family business. And as they've worked in the business, now they're at a stage where they're actually in charge of running the business. But all of us as small business owners are very, very entrepreneurial, energetic, and enterprising. And this is the time when for many of us, we have to go back to what it was like. Well, some of us were quite a bit younger, especially myself, and tap back into that enthusiasm and that energy, that preparedness to take some risks. Because the reality is now all of Australia has been put out of its comfort zone. Now we have no choice. Most people avoid taking risks because they want to stay in their comfort zone. And maybe your business has been motoring along and you had some plans around holidays later in the year. Maybe you're thinking about getting the business ready to sell. And it's awful. We're all grieving because we all had plans, goals, aspirations, and the rug's been pulled out from underneath us. But the second image here is around remembering when you first got into it. Remember those early days. You've still got it. We've got to tap back into it. The third image there is showing you an arrow pointing towards vision. Now, part of the reinvention process is really to think about, well, what do I want my new business to look like? Where are the opportunities? How will I leverage my strengths and assets to position myself to be able to capture those opportunities? What skills will I need? So you've got to tap in to that little lemonade stand operator that's deep inside of all of us and think about where you're taking this and what the business can become. So I just want to, again, reinforce that. Avoid all this bad news. It's not going to serve you. Get tapped back into that energy, that entrepreneurial startup spirit that you've got that's still there. And as you go through the reinvention process and the rethinking, get a clear picture around how you're going to come out from a restart point of view and what you're going to be working towards. So reinvention. There's a few questions to be thinking about, with respect to how you start to think about reinventing the business. As I mentioned earlier, everyone's out of their comfort zone. So it's not like we're really trying to set a New Year's resolution to get fit and eat healthy and do more exercise and lose a few kilos and attempt to have more things changed and change more things about ourselves than what you can possibly do successfully at any particular point in time. We have already been impacted by the change. In normal times, when change gets imposed on people, most people will oppose the change. Change imposed, change opposed. But in this case, we're all in the same boat together with respect to the changing marketplace, the changing consumer landscape. Sure, some businesses are better positioned. They just happen to have a product or service that is in a high level of demand. Now, when you think about your particular business, and besides the fact of the shutdown and the impact that has happened, there are questions to be asking ourselves around, well, what else has changed besides the shutdown? What else is changing out there amongst our customers, amongst our suppliers, amongst the major companies or providers with various things? What's changed? Not just the shutdown, what else is changing with respect to those categories of people? The next question then is to have a think about the level of demand. In other words, total sales, total income, total purchases for your type of products and services. So given what your business was marketing and selling and delivering 6 to 8 weeks ago, what is going to change with respect to the demand, the customer's interest and appetite and ability to buy those products and services over the next, say, 2 months or over the next 6 months? Now, I have a saying, which is the pain of uncertainty is far greater than the certainty of pain. And I've personally found very much big challenges with the uncertainty. How long is it going to last? Is there going to be any financial support? Will we be able to keep some of these employees on? Geez, it sounded really good. Then we've looked at the detail. We have to fund wages and salaries for a period of time. A lot of uncertainty. But if we take the focus away from that uncertainty, which can tend to basically paralyze us towards, okay, we're already experiencing the pain. This pain is not going to go away. Now, I'm operating under an assumption where there will be no vaccine. HIV/AIDS, first started to, infect people in the world back in 1985. That is 35 years ago. Today, there is still no vaccine. There's no equivalent of the flu shot or the measles shot. So we may find that we don't end up with a vaccine. And that's the assumption that I'm certainly operating on. But I'm also operating on the assumption that in coming weeks, if not months, elements of society are going to be able to start moving around more freely, go to work, do those sorts of things. They may not be filling up the MCG or going to a nightclub, but a certain level of typical society and consumer behavior will start again. So have a think about, what do you think the impact of demand will be on your products and services in the next couple of months, then in the next 6 months. What I'm going to share with you now is some information I've just been sent from the Wall Street Journal. And one of the things about America, in the US in particular, there is a lot of data and information available around what's going on in particular industries, what's the total level of sales, what are the trends and those sorts of things. So I thought I would share these because from the bits of information I've been getting from the Bureau of Statistics and talking with a number of business owners, I feel that we're seeing very much similar trends already taking place here and likely to take place. But let me just share with you some statistics. I'll explain to you how to interpret, how to read the charts that I put up, and then you can think about, well, geez, what's the implication for my business of this? Okay, so I'm just going to move the mouse around so you can sort of follow what I'm doing. On this vertical axis, or the mathematicians would say the y-axis, if we remember back to our days in maths class, 0% means that there's been no change in the level of spending. So if it's above 0, there's been more spending, and if it's below 0, there's been less spending. Then on the x-axis, so running along here, we have January the 8th, happens to be the birthday of my mother, so I remember that date well. And on January the 21st, the first case was diagnosed in the US for the virus. So January the 21st. Get my little mouse back here, sorry. And then as we go along to the various dates, we get to the start of March. Then on March the 19th, the state of California issued the first order for people to stay at home. So that's when their lockdown effectively started. And then you'll see that the dates keep running here until April the 1st. So we're almost a month on from this particular situation. Now let's just have a look at what went on in the United States with respect to these. So here's groceries. So you'll see in those early couple of weeks, a lot of toilet paper being sold, a lot of hand washing, disinfectant related product, lots of pasta, lots of frozen meals, canned beans, etc. Now I lived in San Francisco many years ago, and because San Francisco is on the San Andreas Fault, by local government law, so by local council law, every house needed to have a earthquake survival kit. And that earthquake survival kit had to be stored outside of the house, so typically either in a bunker or in a back garden shed or garage. And you had to have enough food and water for your family to survive for 2 weeks. And local council inspectors could come in and fine you, as they would do just ad hoc inspections to maximize the chance that people were complying with that law. So a little surprise that we see what has happened with groceries. Similar thing has happened here. I think yesterday, Coles and Woolworths both announced their financial results, and both showed a significant increase in sales for the first 6 or 8 weeks of the shutdown that's been taking place here. You'll then see under groceries, let me bring my mouse back, health and beauty. So there's less spending going on there. Entertainment and restaurants, transportation, shopping overall. Travel is probably 75% down. If I show you cruise ships, which I will in a minute, it's almost 100% down. So when I think about like what's changed besides the shutdown, it's already having impacts on certain industries in terms of people's ability to spend money in going out and whether they want to spend money and how they're thinking about longer term, how many peanuts they need to squirrel away for how long the economic downturn might be for them. So I'm going to show you another chart that looks at this in a slightly different way. And let me explain to you again the way to read this one. So if I move my mouse to the middle here, this is sort of 0%. This is the change in spending over the first week of April. Or the week ending April the 1st, I should say. So it looks at what was spent in the week ending April the 1st in 2019. How does that compare to the same week 2020? And when you look at the size of the bubbles, like the red bubbles means it's negative, the green bubbles means it's positive. So there's been an increase versus a decrease. And then the size of the bubble gives you a sense of what the total size of the market is. So little surprise, airlines is over here. Quite large expenditure in the United States, so it's a bigger bubble, but it's probably now, it looks to me that it would be 85 to 90% down comparing the same week year on year. Cruises, in this case, not as bad. Let me get my mouse back here. Where has she gone? So there's cruises, fitness, gymnasiums, clothing sales, apparel, accommodation. Yep, no one's going to the movies. Fast food sales are down in the US. Donating to charities are down. Even expenditure on mobile phone subscription plans and data costs are down. And then when we come across onto the green side, let me find my mouse again, general merchandise and purchases of things via e-commerce or buying things on the internet. If anyone's been in Bunnings recently, on Anzac Day, I took my daughter in. Wanted to buy some things, little projects to work on in her apartment, like putting together cupboards and things. And there were just people everywhere from 1:30 p.m. onwards. It was incredibly busy. If we move a little bit further, we see supermarkets underneath general merchandise. Meal kits has grown. Alcohol's grown. The streaming of video, even video meetings. If you think about December, and if I asked you about what Zoom was, you'd say it's something you do on your smartphone to try and get a bit closer when you're taking a photo. I was talking with the senior team at Zoom in San Francisco very recently. They said in December they had, let me get the numbers right here, they had 10 million monthly users that were holding meetings, at least one meeting a month using Zoom. As of effectively the end of March, they've got 200 million every day doing it. Food delivery, 50% increase in the level of food delivery compared to the same time last year. People are locked down at home. They've got more time on their hands. Gaming's up and online groceries up. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen in Australia because in the US, every state has a slightly different approach, different level of chaos. Very sadly, their president was making comments last Thursday around the potential of bleach, products like Lysol that could kill the bacteria almost instantly. Now, I saw this morning in a US newspaper that I read that one of the states has had all of these calls to their consumer hotline asking whether there are any risks associated with drinking Lysol. Sometimes it's amazing what people will believe in terms of where the information comes from and what they're prepared to do. So let's now talk more specifically around this reinvention process. So when you think about what the market's already changed, it's already changed in your particular products and services now. If I go to step number 2 of the plan, which is reorganize, and there are 4 elements to reorganize. The 4 elements or areas are minimize the cash outflow, 2, register for everything the government is talking about offering. And you'll notice those of you where JobKeeper might have been relevant, they're changing the eligibility for that and how it works pretty much every 2 or 3 days. So a major set of announcement yesterday that makes it much easier. So we say to people, register for all of these things to get yourself in the digital queue. Talk with your bookkeeper, your accountant, do your own analysis to work out whether you might be eligible. But to the extent that you can bring some cash in and get it in faster, that's a positive. The 3rd area is finding and connecting with your customers. You have to be communicating with your customers to let them know what's going on, find out how you can help them out. Then the 4th area is all around, you've got to get online fast. And it relates really here to what are some of the new trends. If your business is not online, and when I say the word online, I mean you've actually got a website that you can do some useful things on. Now in November, MYOB, who has 1.1 million Australian small businesses, use MYOB accounting software. Xero is used by a few 100,000. Another couple of 100,000 use QuickBooks or Quicken, and there's another couple of 100,000 that use some other apps. But MYOB went out, they did some research with their own customers, and they did some research with customers that use Xero and others. What they found was that 1 in 2, or 50% of Australian small businesses did not have a website. So you think about what's already changed now. People are looking for more information from their smartphone or over the internet. They've got more time on their hands, particularly while they're in lockdown, that's where they're going. They need to be able to do pretty much everything online. I saw a great example yesterday of a school shoes retailer. So typically this time of the year, these guys have quite big sales. Kids have just started back at school. Kids are growing all the time. You know, some kids need 2 pairs of new school shoes a year. There's always a big remeasurement that happens towards the end of January, early February, before kids go back to school. Then another time when measuring happens and more children's school shoes sales happen is around the start of 2nd term and the start of 3rd term. But he can't have anyone come into his shop under the particular state where he operates. He's had to get online and do things online. So he's innovated very quickly. He's brought out a mechanism where the customer can print out the equivalent of what's that sort of silver stand. Remember when we were kids and mum or dad would take us along to the shoe shop and we could put in there, the shoe guy would come over and we'd take our shoe off and he'd put it in and he'd measure the width and he'd measure the length. Well, they've created one in paper that you can download. The second thing they've done is you can make an appointment for a 10-minute video call with one of their shoe professionals from their store. So now you can have the shoe professional telling you while you've got that, having the kid's foot on it, having you move it around to make sure they're getting the measurements right, then being able to present to the customer, look, here are the 2 or 3 different products that we've got available, showing them via video that the Bata one might have double stitching versus this other lower cost brand's only got single stitching. This one's got a leather upper, blah, 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 blah. All of what used to happen in the shop now happening via a video call. And then the customer's told that, yes, they're in stock in terms of the size that they want. We've got 5 pairs of that one and 8 pairs of that one. The customer then can order it online, can pay for it online straight away, show the person on the Zoom call, yep, I've ordered it and I've paid for, and he can then get it organized either for collection, for them to come by and click and collect, or for it to be delivered to their home by Australia Post on the next delivery run. Now that business has very quickly reinvented itself and is doing a lot of what it does now online. One of the questions will be, busy parents, when they're both back at work, how will they buy the school shoes next time they need to buy them? Tourism is another sector. So high level, back of the envelope, international tourists coming to this country last year spent on average about $30 billion that they brought with them. Now there's no international tourists coming to Australia at the moment. Local Australians leaving Australia, there was 9 million trips last year of Australians going overseas for holidays. They spend almost 20 billion outside of Australia. So when you look at the tourism sector, you go, okay, there's going to be, we're not going to have 30 coming in from international from some point in time, but as the restrictions get lifted and they can start moving around more, they're going to be less likely to go overseas. They're still going to want to have holidays. This is the opportunity now to have some of the international demand replaced by the local demand. So local tourism is going to change quite dramatically. Brand Australia, there are potentially major opportunities for Brand Australia. It's disappointing to see, the issues that are happening between the politicians between China and Australia at the moment. But think about Australia and how we might come out of this. We've been famous for friendly people. We've been famous for incredible wildlife, incredible outdoor scenery. We're famous for very clean environment and high quality food, high quality vitamin related products, high quality baby powder. There's every chance that Australia and New Zealand may come out as demonstrating that we have the best healthcare systems in the world in terms of the way we've been able to go about managing the virus, etc. So we'll have to get through the period, but the brand of Australia, Australian made from Australia, has every potential of being much stronger in the future. Now, if you've got particular products that you make, but at the moment you don't even contemplate exporting them, you've just got a local market, you don't really have a website, you just sell to local people, you might find the local people are less likely to want to buy those products and services in the foreseeable future, but there could well be great markets offshore. So there are opportunities, if you've never done it, to start thinking about exporting and how to get involved in exporting. And in some cases, there are government incentives and grants available to help you put your foot in the water and give that stuff a go. Healthcare is clearly going to change. Services for seniors. One scenario that the government's talking about is potentially letting younger people out and about much earlier because they're still working. They're less likely to catch it, it's less likely to be so serious, but we need to really protect much more securely our senior citizens. We've got a lot of people that have been locked in at home now for a period of time. What are the sorts of things we can be doing in the senior citizen market with respect to what we're doing? The next question is around then when you think about the trends, and you're already changing your own behavior in what you do, but it's happening all around us, and in some cases, people will not go back to the way they used to do it. If they're now more comfortable doing things online, it's more convenient for them to do it. They're not going to instantly just start coming back to your outlet if you've got a physical presence related business. But in terms of reinvention, you've got to think about, well, in terms of what I do now, how much of it could I actually do online in some way? We were with a company I was chatting with last week up in Brisbane, and they have state-of-the-art technology to help physiotherapists with determining the level of strength, etc., that people have got. Over the last 12 months, they've been creating something they call it telehab. So rather than rehabilitation that happens in a rehabilitation gymnasium or in a physiotherapist studio, they've created an app that involves video calls, the actual person being told which exercises to do. They're able to watch on their phone the exercises, then they click record and they record themselves doing the exercises. That instantly goes back to the physiotherapist that can actually see, are they doing them properly? Are they doing them at the right level, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that one company made this product available 4 weeks ago that you could download it on the internet. They now have physiotherapists and exercise physiologists, allied healthcare professionals in 82 countries using that particular technology. So a lot of things are now happening online in various ways that in the past, some business owners have been reluctant to do. I don't need to do it. It's all about my long-standing reputation and where I'm located. The next question to ask yourself is, are there needs that these customers that I have will have that they would see me as being credible as providing? So maybe there's a growing need for certain types of things. It might be local delivery services, it might be services delivered at the home. You may not actually provide those types of services now, but you may provide in a particular area things that are closely associated with those things these customers are going to need more of. I don't know what they necessarily are, but if you have a good brand and you're very trusted, and now there is increased demand for certain things that at the moment you don't do, and those customers would see you as being credible at doing it, there's an opportunity to diversify or expand into some new areas for your business. Now, how will you know what the customer's needs and things are and whether you'd be credible? You have a conversation with them. You get some sense of what is it that they need at the moment that they're having a lot of trouble finding. Is it something that they think you could help them with? If you're able to create something, would they give it a go? Market research, customer research is effectively the way of doing it. I've mentioned exporting as one example in terms of new market opportunities. To give you an idea, there are 900 million people in China that are on the internet with smartphones and that spend a lot more time on their phones and buy a lot more of their things from their smartphones. And there's a growing body of them that like buying Australian products and services, particularly in the food categories, the wine categories, pharmaceutical category, baby-related product categories, and we think increasingly in the health categories. So if you've got the potential to, you already do something in that area, or you could be doing something in that area, thinking beyond your local market, there are groups of customers out there that will buy brand Australia, and I believe increasingly so. Another area is expertise. And I think I see a couple of the businesses that are on the call at the moment have moved from being professionals in what they do and delivering the service for particular clients to actually now moving beyond that to doing training and teaching people how to do things themselves. But you may be an expert at something and you may have the opportunity even to create a course, to be doing some coaching for people. What are you an expert at that you could turn into something that you could be delivering via the internet to people that want that particular expertise? So in every product, or service that gets created and distributed, there's expertise that you as the owner have with respect to the business and that particular product. That might be another opportunity. The next question then in terms of reinvention is, what are the digital tools that you've got to learn to use? And this feeds into also, step number 4, reskilling. But in terms of reinventing, there are certain things, certain particularly digital assets that those businesses that have got them, that had them at Christmas time, are in much better shape than those businesses that didn't have them. Now, what have I got written there on the slide? So CRM's a bit of jargon. It stands for Customer Relationship Management. Think about it as a digital list, the names of your customers, some contact details, ideally email, mobile phone, their home address. Ideally, they're connecting with you also on a Facebook page or appropriate social media. But that information, if you've got that, you can do research with them, you can communicate with them, you can let them know what's going on, you can stay close to them. Now, one of the challenges with some businesses that haven't got that asset in place is, now, well, geez, how do I communicate with my customers? I sort of know them, I know their face, and some of them I know by name when they sort of pop in and get the cappuccino or get their breakfast on the way to the office, or when they pop in when they're having their break in the afternoon. But I can't see them now. I don't really know what their names are. I've got no way of contacting them. They're not coming into the city at the moment because they're locked down in the suburbs at home. How do I let them know that I'm still alive and the business is still going? So this is a very, very critical asset that investments must be made to build it. The second reason why the investment should be made is, and I think we've got Michael Kerr from Kerr Capital here. He helps lots of business owners sell their business, and he's certainly told me in the past that businesses that have got good information systems and information on their customers, he can always help the business owner get a better price. Now, most of us will want to be able to save our businesses, have them improve, and then in time in the future be able to sell them and have that contribute to our superannuation. You really need to consider how you invest in building up your customer database and your ability to communicate with them, because not only will it help you now, but it will help you get a better result when it comes time to sell your business in the future. Website operation, it's much easier these days than what it used to be. It's good to have someone working with you with a lot of experience that helps you get the right stuff together on the site. People need to be able to find you, need to know what you've got available, need to be able to ask you questions and get an answer very quickly, need to be able to make an order or make a booking if it's for an appointment of some sort. They need to be able to pay you, they need to have delivery to take place. And these days, all of those things don't require customized software developers sitting down and making websites like they used to get made 5 or 10 years ago. Now, in my past life, I've been a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and worked with a bunch of programming developers. But back then, there was no YouTube, there was no Zoom, there was no WordPress, there were no plugins. I'm using a lot of jargon now for those of you that aren't that digitally literate, but today there is. And you can get a good professional to work closely with you to very quickly get the right sort of website presence in place. We're already seeing local government here in Melbourne, where I'm based. Now, the City of Melbourne is making grants available to businesses that are in the City of Melbourne postcodes to get training in digital business, and then secondly, to get help in getting their business more digital faster. The state of Victoria is also doing a similar thing, and if businesses have been severely impacted, they have grants available to help them get digital fast. Web video meeting, as I said, I mentioned Zoom really wasn't that well known before Christmas, whereas now it's something that a lot of people have got experience with. If you're going to use it, you can learn the basics online from them, then think about getting some practical training on how to use it very effectively so that you are as effective coming via Zoom as you would be when your customers actually come to visit you, or as you deal with them on the telephone. Okay. I just want to give you a couple of examples of businesses that are pretty quickly reinventing, and then I'll have a look at if anyone sent me any questions via chat, and otherwise I'll open it up to questions. This chap here, Shane D'Elia, is a well-known chef, certainly down here in Victoria. I think he's appeared from time to time on some of those cooking shows like Master Chef and Kitchen Rules and those sorts of things. A very successful restaurateur, Middle Eastern cuisine. First restaurant called Maha, M-A-H-A, down in Melbourne. And up until 5 weeks ago, he had 3 other venues, including one that he just fitted out in the Fitzroy area, Smith Street, Fitzroy, here in Victoria. Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on getting it all ready, and it was only able to trade for 2 weeks. Now, he's closed them all down except for the kitchen in his main city restaurant. And as he got together with his core team, he said, well, what can we do? We could just do food delivery. We could use Uber Eats and those sorts of things. And I'd say, well, it's not really what we cook. What we cook is not really made properly. It would end up arriving cold and mushy and slushy. There's thousands of choices people have got. Those platforms take sometimes up to 30% of what the price of the meal is. It doesn't fit with our brand and our reputation that we've built up over 20 plus years. So they brainstormed and said, well, there's still going to be people, even during the lockdown, that are going to want to eat restaurant style, well prepared, delicious, healthy meals, which they're not going to be able to find on Uber Eats, etc., or from their local places. We have, these guys use Instagram and Facebook. They've got lots of people that follow them, so they're able to communicate with those people quite easily, particularly using Facebook Messenger on Facebook. So what they conceived was what they call now Maha Go. Now, Maha Go is very different from just takeaway food. A lot of restaurants have moved to, yeah, we're doing takeaway, come and buy a tray of lasagna, those sorts of things, and that's fabulous. What these guys have decided to do is say, now let's go to our current customers and let them know that you can make an order. You can come in the next day and either pick it up from us or we'll organize delivery of the family meal. So ideally we're feeding, a minimum of 2 people, but we could be, feeding 5 or 6, depending on how many are in the household during the lockdown period. But you're going to get everything you need, very well prepared, with maybe 20% less to do. The last 20% you can do with your family and finalizing, and you can sit down and have a family meal. So they've not just instantly gone to takeaway. They've really had to think about, there are still some gaps in the market in terms of getting food delivered at home. And we've got customer contact details that we can communicate with. But he's also a really good example, Shane, of, I've just got a couple more people here that want to come in. I'll just let them in there. There we go. He's also a really good example of step number 4, because while he's had a social media, I was chatting with him when he first got on LinkedIn. So he never really used LinkedIn. He's been on it, and he let people know about Maha Go. And I've been interacting and messaging him saying, well done, keep going, you can make it through. And it's great to see you on LinkedIn and great to see the new offering with Maha Go. And he goes, yeah, I'm really new to this LinkedIn thing. I don't really use social media. He's got someone that manages Instagram and Facebook for him. But now he's discovered that with this thing called LinkedIn, in fact, he's got a bunch of customers and he's got their email addresses and he's been able to find them. Some are still actually working in the city of Melbourne. They're still going into their office. They're in senior executive positions. Now they're aware that they can actually order the Maha Go and pick it up and take it home with them. So he's starting to reskill himself in terms of the use, in this case, of something like LinkedIn. So he had a good web presence, pretty good. You could make bookings online with him. But you couldn't order and buy things. You can now. He was good on Instagram and Facebook. But again, he's reskilling himself. What else can he use to find those customers and communicate with them? So, I take my hat off to Shane and his team. And as I see a lot of really innovative things happening in terms of the reinvention. So irrespective of how long it takes to get back to people being able to dine, Shane knows that he's not going to be able to fill up his one main restaurant in the way that he used to fill it up, possibly for several months, maybe for a year. But in the meantime, he's been able to cut back his costs and expenses and find a new profitable market amongst those existing customers and keep that business going to give him every opportunity of coming out the other side and being in better shape. Here's another example. This lady's name is Martha Tsamis. Now, Martha is a Greek lady and a nightclub entrepreneur. So a nightclub entrepreneur, owns a significant nightclub in the King Street, Melbourne area and also out in the Paran area in Victoria. She got together with her team when literally her businesses was closed down. There's no one turning up on sort of Thursday through to Sunday nights, drinking lots of alcohol, dancing to the beat and all the rest of the stuff that goes on in nightclubs. Had to let a lot of people go. Had to start dealing with her landlords in terms of negotiating how things were going to work with rental payments, contacted all of her key suppliers to come up with arrangements in terms of when she'll be able to pay and what she'll be able to pay, but then started focusing on what do people need that we could be a retailer or distributor of. And it took them almost a month to get it organized, to find the supply. Who can supply, sanitizer product, cleaning products for the homes and for offices, gloves, masks, those things. Then they got the message out to their customers. They had a pretty big email database and a pretty big Instagram database, because in some of these areas, people are looking for the product. Now, when you take something like the masks, the P95 masks, I returned from the Middle East at Christmas time, and I'm an asthmatic, and I was finding the smoke particularly troublesome for my breathing. But I couldn't find N95 masks anywhere. And when I talked to Officeworks and Bunnings, I said, well, literally a lot of people with asthma have been buying these, over the last few weeks with the bushfires. So there was a shortage in that category of product all the way back then as a result of the bushfires. But you can bet your bottom dollar, if she and her business is marketing that stuff, and I'm talking to a friend about, I really need to get some masks, they're going to say, hey, you should go and check out what's going on down here. Let me forward it to you. So in this case, she's very quickly moved from an entertainment business with lots of bodies drinking and carrying on with lots of staff, to a smaller number of staff, knowing that there is demand out there, leveraging the marketing channels they've got. And I understand that she's cash flow positive now in terms of the way she's reinvented it. Does she see herself doing this forever? No, but in the meantime, she's cash flow positive to get through this period. What will the future look like? It's unclear as to what the nightclub industry is going to look like going forward. But she's bought herself some time to breathe, time to be thinking, time to be ready to reskill and get ready to restart. The last slide in your handouts, and if you don't have the handouts printed out, just use a piece of paper. The full survival plan that I've been describing is available at this website address, smallbusinessaustralia.org. I know it's a mouthful. You need to type it in very slowly, get the spelling correct, and you'll be able to find where that is, and you'll be able to download that, and the sorts of things I've been talking about are covered in much more detail in that report. This is the fourth of the webinars that we've done. Tomorrow we will have information available for you as to where the recordings are. We've had a lot of people make contact with us that have wanted to participate, but the times weren't convenient. So we've gone about recording them, and the recording will be of what I've actually presented, and we're keen for people to know where this exists so they can get some encouragement and some practical things that they can start thinking about and start doing to get through to the other side and be better positioned. The last link there is every couple of weeks or so we are updating a listing of the key government websites to go to. So we initially did this around the bushfire time. It was very complex and still is complex to work your way through lots of information if you're a bushfire affected. The same thing's happening with respect to COVID-19. To be fair to all levels of government, there was preparation clearly in certain areas, but in other areas they weren't really prepared to the level that we would all hope they would be in hindsight. But they are announcing things, and then their departments are working through how it's going to work. And then as people are providing them feedback saying, hey, I should be eligible for this, but I'm not, they are tweaking and adjusting things. So it's important to keep up to date, even though you may have looked at something 2 weeks ago. It's very likely that the way it's being implemented may well have changed, and it may well have changed in terms of loosening it up in some way. If you don't have experience in using Google Alerts, I encourage you to go to Google or Bing, if you like that search engine, and type in Google Alerts and read how you set them up. And then you can set them up so that anytime some new information goes on the internet that relates to things like financial support for small businesses, COVID-19, you'll get an email from Google saying, here's some links to the new articles that have just appeared. So have a good look at how that works. It's a really good way of having stuff pushed to you to get you up to speed with what the latest information is. And of course, your accountant and or bookkeeper, if you use a bookkeeper, are actually in the best position to be able to let you know what your potential eligibility is for some of those things. But deep down, the government is not going to save our businesses. It's going to be up to each of us working with our team members, our families, other local businesses in the area, and our customers to get the businesses through, get them reinvented, and then get them on a path to where we want to take them. It's going to be a tragedy for a lot of business owners that are going to be closing down, all that work that they've put in some cases through no fault of their own, in some cases not being as well prepared as some of the businesses that survive. But if we lose 500,000, that means there's 1.5 million left. In some cases, there'll be less competition in certain industry sectors, which will be a positive for those businesses that have been able to make it through. But I think all of us will become growth oriented. In the past, there's been a number of us that are quite happy managing along. We're all out of our comfort zone. It's all about now finding the new opportunities, keeping the current customers that we've got, expanding where it makes sense, using the technologies to do things more efficiently, learning some new skills, which I'm very confident, because I've seen many business owners do it time and time again, that you are all capable of doing.